Welcome to another live episode of the Relevant Recruiter Show. Today I've got a fantastic guest. Excited to introduce my buddy, Brandon McGill. Brandon works with National Engineering Search, and I've had the pleasure of working with Brandon for over last year. And one of the unique things about Brandon is he's actually very rarely one of the people that lives close to me out here in Boise, Idaho. So we get to have lunch on a regular basis. But today we're going to talk about Brandon's story. He's going to share his assess of how last year he kind of tapped out of 10 placements. He's give you some nuggets that can help move you forward himself, and how we were able to turn that around into 11 placements here in Q1 and counting, because we're still not done with Q1. So Brandon, for joining me today and sharing your story, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Donnie. I appreciate the event to be on here, and obviously our relationship has started off interesting. So it's happy to be on here, happy to share a little bit about where this all started at. But so awesome. I guess my short and sweet story is I have an entrepreneurial sales background myself. I at one point was in internet marketing, had my own internet marketing company doing websites and SEO and all those things back before social media got super crazy. I made a family decision at one point to step away from that world and got introduced to recruiting. Worked with my now business partner, Gary Todd, back in the day. He taught me what I now know about recruiting at the very basic level. And I was a project recruiter for him, just making as many possible phone calls in a day as I could back in the day,
right.
Young and dumb, let's just hit the phones and go. I mean, I'd tell people all the time, got a face for
now
the phone.
You've had 2 stints with Gary though, right?
So this is my second stint with Gary.
Yes. Second stint with Gary. So tell us that. Give us a little backstory about that.
Yeah, and it was really cool. So when I never really knew about recruiting, I guess. Like you get occasional emails or whatever on LinkedIn, but you don't realize how big of an industry it is. At least I didn't when I was at that age. But got introduced to this world and really found a passion in it. I really enjoyed that initial run with Gary, learned a lot. There was just a lot of things there that I really enjoyed. And I still tell Gary to this day, is like, that's the hardest job that I've ever left, because I enjoyed it so much. But just at the time, I actually conveniently got recruited away from working with him and went into petroleum sales. I worked with one of the largest fuel and oil distributors in the Northwest. So I worked outside sales for them throughout Oregon. Learned a lot while I was there. They had their own professional sales training, all those things that come with a company of that size and growth. So there's definitely some nuggets that I took away from that. We made the move as a family to the Boise area, and in the middle of that transition, Gary reached back out to me and basically said, "Hey, we worked great together before. What do you think of maybe working together again?" And I just told him, I was like, "Man, you make the numbers make sense, and I'm open to having the further conversation." And he happened to make the numbers make sense, and now here we are. So
that's awesome.
What was it? August of 2021, I think, is when I started working with him again. Now, because we're about a year and a half in. As with anything in sales, that first few months is always interesting, and rebuilding a pipeline from what I had, 5 years previous when I worked with him before. So my LinkedIn was a lot different. A lot of my connections got cleaned up because I didn't think I was coming back to this world, if I was being honest with you. And, came back into it. First 6 months were brutal. Started off 2022 with a bang, like a pretty good sized bang. And then it just, I got confident, or maybe overconfident, like, oh, I can do this. This is good.
Right.
In my pipeline did some ebbs and flows. And the second part of last year didn't go as smoothly. We had things in the pipeline, but, I just probably got overly confident, if I'm being brutally honest with you.
Right.
And didn't keep the back end of my pipeline filled, relied too much on a couple placements possibly happening. And the last 6 months of last year slowed down significantly. And I was coming into this year and even starting the program with you, I think it was mid last year when I kind of felt that happening. And I was like, well, I got to do something proactive here.
Right.
Started your program, started implementing things. And again, as you go through the training, not everything happens overnight, obviously. So start implementing those things, putting practices into play, and definitely started feeling some traction later in the year. Everything takes time to come to fruition, but started getting really positive feedback from people I'm talking to, people I'm connected to. And as the network grows through the tools that you've provided me and taught me about, I've only seen positive things happening from it. I'm making more connections. I've gotten clients, I've gotten candidates. I mean, the full gamut of everything that a recruiter like myself could ask for it's been happening. And I've actually been in a space here recently where I've had to turn people away that want to hire me, but I just don't have the capacity for it. Which
that's awesome, man. I mean, you've been able to turn around.
I would say
pretty dang quickly. But I want to kind of go back a step, and you mentioned overconfidence, but in terms of like, there's overconfidence. Was kind of how you identify it. But like, would you say that maybe, because I think a lot of with me speaking with a lot of recruiters, working with a lot of recruiters, I think what happened with you last year is not uncommon. I think it's actually very common. You just kind of giving some advice, like what were some of the things that you kind of caught yourself doing, or maybe taking your foot off the gas that, maybe some reminders for other folks out there?
I think it's exactly that. Is I just, I'm a car guy, so taking your foot off the gas is like the best analogy that you could use, especially with me. But, you take your foot off the gas, maybe hit the brakes because you're comfortable, right?
Right.
And normally that's not a thing that I have. Like I have a pretty much all the time go mentality, but it got a hold of me last year just from, family and everything else that was going on. I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm in a good place. Family is good. Work is good. And then it kicked in about like 3 months into the whole, this is great. And I was like, oh crap, I need to keep this ball rolling. Like this isn't going to roll on its own. I got to keep pushing this thing.
Yep.
So, again, we implemented the Relevant Recruiter program. We're seeing some great results from that. Part of what this has brung to me is I'm actually bringing on a project recruiter here shortly to help handle and increase our capacity, just because we have the need, our clients have the need, and off we go essentially. So I think we get that 100% taking. I took my foot off the gas.
Yeah. And I think, just kind of going back and me remembering part of your journey, and this is what I see too, is like, I know that when we first started working together, actually, it was the opposite. Like you had a lot of clients on the plate and business on the plate. And then I think this kind of happens with recruiters is we don't want to ruin our reputation. We want to focus on what we want to fill, but then the foot off the gas of the pipeline empties it out. And then we were able to reload it, fortunately.
Yeah. And
but man, I appreciate you being vulnerable and kind of sharing that, because I think that's really valuable to people that are listening. And if you are listening live right now, feel free to ask us any questions as we go through there. Give us a little likes and love so that this post reaches more folks. Excuse me, this interview reaches more folks on the platform here. So yeah, man, I think it's been inspiring to watch your journey, inspiring you to to kind of get the thing figured out and pointed back in the right direction. I want to talk about your, you've had a tremendous mentor in Gary. Let's talk about him for a minute. I mean, what were some of the things that, he's really brought to the table for you, that you feel has made you successful?
That has differentiated what we do, essentially. Gary, he's been in this industry now. I don't want to age him. He's 35 years old, and he's been in the industry 30 years. If he's watching, documenting his age. But exactly, exactly. But Gary is one of those guys. I mean, him and I have a very similar personality type when it comes to how we approach, like our bulldog mentality, right? Like when somebody turns us onto something, we're determined to go figure it out and find the solution. We will both just put our head down and go. So we connect through that mentality, but Gary has taught me more of the professional recruiting, executive recruiting. I mean, we're not recruiting, a lot of times we're not recruiting guys that are just out of school. We're dealing with professional civil and geotechnical engineers all across the country for very high level projects, high level companies. I mean, we have to represent in a professional manner And, his mentorship, his guidance, his friendship has really helped me, I would say, wrap my head around that. I'm still young. At least I like to think so. I've got some professional sales experience, but I'm not selling a product anymore. I'm selling opportunity to people that are professionals and have a real career. It's not just selling fuel and oil, not a commodity. So that's where I feel like he's really mentored me to say, hey, this is our approach. This is how we go about representing ourselves and how we want to represent ourselves. And, his mentality has been the basics of how I've done pretty much everything. I've brought in tools to the table at NES that are, like the relevant recruiter stuff. Those tools that, for lack of a better term, I'll say old dog didn't know those tricks. So now that we are, I'm come on board and I'm showing how this works. I mean, we're going to be implementing these practices across our entire firm. And I think for the long haul of NES, it's going to be, I'm excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah.
But I think it's off of Gary's basics and what he's taught me. And then now we're just emphasizing those and growing.
Right. Well, I know, the way I kind of look at it is like, I know Gary, taught you the basics of, the recruiting, but it's beyond the basics, right? I mean, he's taught you some high level stuff, but I think that a lot of people get confused because I offer such a modern approach and what you've done is kind of marry kind of the old school approach with the modern approach without giving away your secret sauce. How has that worked for you how are you kind of doing a little bit of both?
It's funny. I've heard you say before that, I don't believe that cold calling will ever be dead. I mean, there's always going to be a version of cold calling, whether it be connecting on LinkedIn from cold, physically picking up the phone and doing the cold. I would definitely say that the way that we've kind of seen things transition and from the practices that I've put into place with kind of combining the two is I'm still on the phone and I'm still cold calling on certain jobs. But I still have, things going in the background that do some of that work for me. Like if we're trying to break into a new practice, we have to build our network. We have to build our pipeline with those folks. And sometimes just purely calling into a company's office because you don't have somebody's cell phone quite yet. One gets old. Two, we get caught. I mean, there's multiple times that they're like, hey, stop calling us. You're a recruiter. We know. And it's okay, cool. Like I'll find a different way, or I'll give it a week and call from a different situation. But I think just the purity of just staying connected, being able to keep that background connections, conversations, all those things that have to happen, but I don't have to physically pick up the phone every time to start those conversations. Saves me time, saves me effort. I can focus in on the things that, if we have a hard job that I need to be hardcore recruiting on, my pipeline is still filling, but I'm dedicating my personal time to go hammer on the thing that I need to hammer.
Right. So you would say that you've seen an impact, I mean, we can call it whatever, cold calling, but it's almost like with the system that we've set up, in addition to that, it warms up the prospect, whether they're a client or candidate.
Sure.
There's a little more familiarity with what you have going.
I've even like right now, for instance, through the efforts of what we've done through LinkedIn and, the things that I've learned from the Relevant Recruiter program and put into practice, I've been getting calls from candidates that are like, hey, we're seeing you on LinkedIn. We like what you're doing and how you represent yourself and potentially represent me as a candidate. We're looking for a new opportunity, or I'm looking for a new opportunity. How can you help me? And those conversations don't happen unless, from previous times, like I would have had to pick up the phone and call that guy and been connected with him some other way to where he would trust me to reach out to me. But he sees my presence and the niche that we're in. And he reached out to me and said, I like how you represent yourself. I would like you to represent me and help me find a new opportunity. So, I mean, that's, as a recruiter, that's easier than cold calling.
Right. Well, and I think that's, I use cold calling as my enemy, but the reality of it is when it comes to the actual recruiting, the headhunting, it's whatever means necessary, right? So
100%.
Cold calling is going to be a part of that.
It's all a tool.
On the business development side, I push back on that one a little bit more, but I think that's really cool for people that are listening that have kind of used the traditional, outbound model that, hey, continue to do that. But when we throw something like this on top of that, it really, it increases the response rates, it increases the volume and everything like that. Now, one of the things, kind of talking about last year and keeping the foot off of the gas, and kind of where you had that little bit of a lull, share, if you will, how, we leverage automation, that's one of the things that we taught and implemented. How has the automation impacted you now in Q1, where we've gone from, 10 total placements last year, we've got 11 here in Q1. You just mentioned before we got on here, 12 kind of dangling out there. So that awesome start to this year. But how much has the automation helped impact, keeping that volume up and keeping your pipeline filled?
Well, again, I mean, I'm really starting to see, it was like through Q4 and like really Q1, where the relevant recruiter stuff, I've really started seeing the impact. We've attacked social media a little bit harder than just the basic occasional post on LinkedIn. So we're doing some things that are more proactive on our end too. But I would definitely say that the practices of what we have in place now are continuing to fill the back end of connections, those connections that turn into potential candidates. I've got the jobs that I know I'm recruiting for, but it's through these other campaigns and even in other parts of the country that I'm not actively recruiting yet, but I'm like, I know I'm going to need my network to be there eventually. I'm getting candidates out of those areas just by passively basically just asking, like, hey, my introduction is, this is who I am, this is what I do. If I can be a resource, great. If you're looking to hire, I potentially can help you. Like, I just basically explaining who I am, what I do in a very passive way, essentially. I'm not, knocking anybody over the head and dragging them into the cave, at least not in that situation. But but I think that's the biggest thing, is it keeps filling the pipeline on the back end while I'm recruiting heavily on the front. And it keeps candidates coming in that I can market, on jobs that I don't specifically have, but I can find jobs for people. So between the bringing in candidates that I can market for opportunities, bringing in candidates that are direct people for the jobs that I am recruiting for, and just having that general appearance and, letting companies know, this is who we are, this is what we search for, this is where our niche is. We get phone calls from companies saying, we see you, how we need help.
Let's dive into that seeing you part a little bit more, because you just mentioned that, kind of towards Q4, we really kind of 10x'd your LinkedIn content presence. We've kept that going full throttle. And there's a debate out there that I like to bring up every time, that content doesn't work for recruiting agencies. In a quick response, what would you say to somebody that says content doesn't work for recruiting agencies?
I would say type of content for sure. As a recruiter, the stereotypical recruiter, even within the space that I have, is I get messages, and the compliments that I get a lot of the time are like, oh, it's so nice to like see a face that's not just text or an email or something. Like, I utilize video so people can see who I am. They can see my personality a little bit. It builds just simply more trust of, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. And we push that out on LinkedIn. I've got it as part of some of our other drip campaigns. It's just introductions to people. Just so, again, I'm differentiating in so many ways within the space that we're in. I don't think I've seen too many other recruiters, even just in my specific niche, that are approaching it this way. So it's been a benefit.
What would you say for you when you first kind of went on the content journey? Like, what was the biggest kind of obstacle or challenge that you were going through?
It's funny. I mean, with my internet marketing background, I know the value to it, right? So for me, it was just a matter of, am I ready for this? Because I know what potentially this could do. So do I have capacity and the mentality to really take this on if this takes off? So, the nice thing is you can kind of full throttle it. You can half throttle it. Like, you can kind of gauge what you want to do with it, turn campaigns on and off, things like that. But, you find your balance in that chaos, and it can be a very lucrative thing.
Yeah. Now, what about, a lot of people that I work with, a lot of people you went through the program with, that there's a little bit of fear of going on the content journey. Did you experience that? Do you have any hesitation about putting yourself out there?
No, I just own it, man. It's one of those things. Like it's, I've always been the 6'3" redhead in a crowd. I've always been outspoken. I've worked in outside sales, so being in front of people is not really a problem for me. Like public speaking, maybe, like if you asked me to get up on a stage in front of a whole bunch of people, that's probably where I'd be a little bit more nervous. But just representing myself in the best and most genuine way possible, it almost comes naturally to me. I mean, I'm sure that I could get better at how I represent myself, but I just try to be as genuine as I can and talk with the people that we're looking to connect with, and just have those real conversations and be a real individual in those conversations. And that's all I can do. And then whatever happens with that happens with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that's powerful about the way you've implemented, and the way that we're, teaching you to implement is actually true authenticity, right? Sure. We're playing authentic. We don't need to show up and perform for anybody. We just get to be ourselves and add value to the marketplace, and, allow ourselves to go on the journey of becoming a better content marketer. I mean, I would imagine that for yourself, you feel a hell of a lot better about your skills, I don't know, 6 months ago versus, where you're at right now. Like there's got to be a whole different level of comfort and just how you articulate and deliver your message.
There's an aspect where I'm also comfortable with it, but I know where my skill sets lie. So I find other people that find where my weaknesses are and say, okay, we're building a team here. We're going to fully commit to this thing, and we're going to, because again, I mean, recruiting can be a very lucrative business. So if you can justify the cost of bringing on a social media manager or somebody that can help you with editing videos, I mean, those things that just take time that I'm not a professional at.
Right.
If you make one placement, it pays for it. So I mean, it's hard to not justify it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one placement is definitely you should see an ROI from something like that.
And I'll say another tool, I mean, it's available to anybody, and it's the free aspect. But a tool that I utilize a lot is every time that I make a placement, I wait obviously until that person starts and everything is good, but I reach out to that person. I say, hey, I really appreciate you being willing to work with me as the candidate. The only thing that I'm going to ask of you is if you can write me a LinkedIn recommendation about your experience of working with me, how the process was. Like, almost every engineer's talked with another recruiter. So what made me different to you, and why did you decide to work with me in this opportunity? So that's my free tool that I utilize a lot. I send a lot of people to those, as far as, clients. If they want to know how I work, I just say, hey, go read my recommendations on LinkedIn. You'll know that just from that, you'll be able to tell how I handle myself as a recruiter.
Right. I had a really good question come in from Steve Cox here. And Steve asked, what specifically did you implement in order to increase your successful placements, Brandon?
I would 100% say a big part of that would be the Relevant Recruiter program. And that's not even trying to sell for Donnie in this situation, but I would accredit a lot of that success in the way that my pipeline is now being handled and built on what I implemented from that program specifically.
Yeah.
Donnie's awesome. He's not closing deals for me though, so I'll take a little bit of credit. But it's the practices that Donnie helped me out with in that program that definitely helped me and really made me feel like that next leveled my approach with recruiting.
Steve, I paid him a hefty fee before this interview here to get him to say that. So
I want 10% after money order.
Steve, we have the Relevant Recruiter method is what we help Brandon implement, and a lot of, just tactically, we're doing a lot of great LinkedIn outreach strategies, showing up in LinkedIn differently, it really piquing the interest of our clients and candidates. And then we have a really aggressive content strategy that we do. So I can kick you over some other training, Steve. We're happy to have a phone call with you and share more about that. But thank you for asking that question. You teed that up nicely for me and Brandon.
Here's
going into that, Brandon, just since Steve gave us a fantastic segue here. You followed me for a while. We had a couple of conversations, but we've kind of identified, the challenge before, working is keeping that loaded pipeline while you were busy, filling roles. I guess, what has surprised you about our experience working together?
That's a good question. I would say the thing that surprised me the most was the more personalized approach to it. So not just like your approach to me, but like you guys helping with making it a personalized approach from us to candidates or clients. The content and the things that you guys have on the back end. There's messaging that can represent. So, you guys have multiple options of content to like really make it my own, but yet still gives the flow of like, okay, here's step, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or through whatever of this is how you reach out. Here's some options that you can utilize for just basic templates, but they're still very personal. It's not just like, you turn on Chat GPT or whatever that AI is and let it ride, But I definitely say that was the thing that stood out to me was like, okay, I can take this content very easily and make it my own, but the general idea is still the same from your guys' flow. That was the thing that really helped me in that situation. That's what I needed in that concept, because I'm the put your head down, go do it guy. But if I don't have a direction, I'm kind of the sit there and twiddle my thumbs guy. So
right. Awesome. That's great feedback. What would you say, in terms of, you've kind of hinted on this earlier, but I just want to kind of get for the people listening, just kind of the clarity around how does your market receive you now that they've seen some of your content? Like, do you feel like the hiring decision makers, have more respect for you? Do you feel like there's a different kind of lens that they're seeing you through?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly on the hiring me as a recruiter side, because of
Right.
a lot of what I'm doing in this is more for candidates, because we've got so many jobs that I'm not really pursuing new ones. We've staying very busy, and I want to be able to perform for the clients that we have before I worry about other ones too much.
Right.
But at that same note, the feedback that I've gotten for both candidates and companies, I did a post a little while ago. I think it's the one you and I had shared, that it was basically a post of exactly the type of people that I recruit for, have my niche within, know my network is, and it's those 5 to 20 year civil and geotechnical engineers.
Right.
And I made that post. I don't remember if there's a video attached with it or not, but the feedback from that was, I got probably six or seven phone calls from companies, just off of that one post saying, hey, that's exactly who we're looking for. How can you help us? And at first I was like deer in headlights. Like, I wasn't expecting to get this much out of this. Like 1, maybe 7. Like, kind of, I have to pick and choose the jobs that I need to go after, because again, we kind of have a niche. We don't go for super young engineers very often. It's not, a lot of times it doesn't make sense for the company to hire us to do that. So, but I was in shock. It was a kind of an eye opener for me of, okay, just something that simple can really open the eyes up of people and gain trust of folks, knowing what we're looking for and where we specialize.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
What would you say if somebody's just, listening? We'll call Steve. Steve, you're listening still. If Steve was on the fence working with me, what would you tell Steve?
It's one of those things of like, I looked at it as a cost, right? It's like as a business owner, especially as a newer back into this world, I was like, okay, how can I justify the cost of doing something like this? And after I ran the math, I was like, man, this thing makes me one placement, and I'm paid for this for 2 years, essentially, is where I kind of ran my own math. I was like, well, crap, it might take a little bit of time to implement, but I would 100% say that the sacrifice of your own time learning how to do this will definitely pay. It's a little bit bold to say tenfold, but I think that's a very real number in the recruiting world, to be able to say, okay, I can fill my pipeline with both clients and candidates, and it's kind of automated. You still have to personalize it and put your time into it, but if it's feeding your pipeline for you of candidates or clients that are directly within your market, that's, to me, that's priceless.
Love it, man. Love it. And I think the big thing that, is important that you keep on, highlighting is that my program's not a magic pill. A lot of the success is the reason people have success in my
There's a little
program
bit of a
is
magic pill in there. A little bit of one.
yeah, well, a little bit. But the reality of it is it takes somebody like yourself that's committed and willing to go through the lumps
Like
and
you
the
want to
ups
have,
and downs and stick with it and then build the machine and then optimize the machine.
it's definitely a
I think that's a
commitment. I
testament
mean,
to you as you
I
go through
still
the
go
program.
back and there's modules that I've skipped over or whatever, and I go back and I'll text you and be like, hey, what about this? And you go, hey, dude, that's module this, whatever. Like, dang it, that was the one that I skipped. I need to go back and look at it. But I mean, really, I mean, that's one of the things. It's like you can always go back to it. You can always get a refresher. I'm gonna be going back into it again and looking at different aspects that I just wasn't quite ready for when I went through it initially. I know it's there. I wasn't ready for it initially, but now that I think just using the Relevant Recruiter program, I think I've doubled my LinkedIn network in the last, I'll say 8 months probably, and it's all people directly in the market that I recruit in, which is again priceless. I mean, that could be placements, it could be clients, it could be any of the above, but you represent yourself in your niche market, and that a lot of cool things can happen.
Yep. Stock in a pond of your ideal fish.
Exactly. Should we address Summer, or can I address Summer's question there?
Yeah, I was just about to address Summer's question. How you doing, Summer? Hope you're doing well.
Yeah.
Summer went through the program a couple years back. So
a couple years back. All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I initially worked with NES about, I'll say 8 years ago. And I worked with my now business partner, Gary Todd. I worked with him for about 2.5 years. So that's when I initially got into it. I got recruited away from it and worked away from it for 5 to 6 years in a totally irrelevant space. I went and sold fuel and oil. And now that I'm back in it, I think I started August of 2021 was when I got back in and started hitting the ground running again. And, those first few months of just ramping back up, getting the pipeline rebuilt from 5 years ago where I cleaned everybody out of my LinkedIn. That was a geotechnical engineer. Hindsight, that was dumb. But, now that I'm back into it, it's about 1.5 years. August will be 2 years since I've been back to full desk recruiting.
Yep. Beautiful. Beautiful. Hopefully that answers everything there for you, Summer. Steve, I appreciate that. How my program differentiates. There's a couple of things that I think really differentiate my program. First and foremost is all I do is work with, independent and boutique recruiting firms. So I feel like I understand that part, those businesses better than anybody in the space. Second thing is I'm not a recruiter. I'm a marketing expert that just happens to work in the recruiting agency. So I think what you see with a lot of other coaches in the space is they ran their business and they're going to go start a marketing program and teach people that. So, I'm a true marketing expert. I'm a nerd about it. I get coaching myself about it every single day, pretty much, to constantly improving, my skills, which then in turn, improve my program. But I think the biggest thing, Steve, is that what we've talked about here with Brandon is that my program isn't a cookie cutter, one size fits all type of a thing. What makes the program really unique is that we've got really strong marketing and messaging frameworks that are successful and proven. But when it's applied, for example, like how Brandon's used it, that's where we've really get the most impact. So it really makes the program so unique is that it's about you, and we build it custom for you, and really empower the individuals that go through the program. You think I hit that pretty well, Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at some other programs myself, and there's maybe some others that I seriously considered, but after doing a little bit more research, it's pretty much like they just say, here's your access to the portal, go do your own thing, and if the right person could go do that. I know with my personality, I'm the guy that's like, I'm happy to go do it, but what's my guidance here? What am I doing? This is all new to me. The Relevant Recruiter program breaks it down literally step by step, and then you guys have your support calls. I think it's once or twice a week. I've slowed down on those a little bit. Probably should get back engaged. You can hold me accountable on that one if you want to, Gary.
Yeah.
But that I would say that's a big differentiator for me, was just the personal, the true personal approach of this, and the space that you're in, the recruiter space it's still a niche space, but I mean, recruiting is still recruiting at the end of the day, and everybody's individual section you speak to. I mean, the same practices are going to work, whether you're looking for nurses or construction people or engineers or, whatever else you're recruiting for. The practices are there and are genuine.
Yeah. I appreciate you throwing that in there as well. And yeah, Steve, one of the big things is the support, right? This isn't an information product. It's not just a package. Training portal is if you go to my testimonial page on my website, if you look at my LinkedIn recommendations, I think you'll get a good sense that I'm very passionate about the results that we drive. And I enjoy sharing people's stories like Brandon's here and sharing his success as a way to share the success that people have that go through the program. So thank you for your comment as well, Summer. Brandon, getting back to you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
What are you excited about next?
What 2023 has to bring, man. Like I said earlier, I'm bringing on a recruiter to work with me and help just with pure capacity. I mean, we've had a lot of talk around economy slowing down, and in the tech space, you see a lot of people layoffs and transitions in that space. But within the space that I'm in, we're so busy. Like, I literally have to turn away work because people are like, we need engineers, we need X, Y, Z, and we have the blessing of knowing almost exactly what that person's looking for. And so, I really feel like 2023 is going to be a groundbreaking year for our team here at NES and what we are going to be looking at in the future.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. And I was actually kind of surprised. I thought you were going to be most excited about, joining me in a December football game out here in Boise when it's about 26
I'm going to definitely wear warmer clothes next time. I promise you that. I'm going to get some of those hand warmers off of like Dumb and Dumber,
Yep. Oh yeah.
Cold out here. I'm putting them in my back pockets next time. Those benches were freezing.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. The cement seats. Yeah. I'm surprised it wasn't the number one thing you're excited about.
Not being warm at a football game, man. That's all I'm excited about right now.
Yeah.
But no, and then also the fact that I kind of cheat and I get you locally, so we occasionally, barbecues on me this next time around. But
looking forward to it. Last couple things I want to hit on. I know you've got a nice, beautiful young family, beautiful wife, and a couple young boys. I mean, how has this impacted that part of your life?
Oh man, I mean, I went from on the road sales, like I was, putting 50,000 miles on my truck every year in outside sales. And, obviously that affects my flexibility to be around my family. I made decent money in doing that. I will not take anything away from the living that I made while I did that. But doing this has allowed me ultimate flexibility. At this point, your curse is you've made me so busy with your programs. Like, I have to cut time out of my schedule in the day if I need to go do anything during the day, because people are scheduling profiles with me, which is a blessing, but that's also, I can control that. I am in charge of my own destiny in this situation. And, I can, change really the future of my family from, how I grew up to what I'm looking at as potential as far as, changing the generational wealth, I guess you could call it, of my family.
Right.
It's a very real thing, and having that flexibility to be with my family. And if we want to take a vacation, I can take this with me. I can take my laptop, work for a couple hours in the day, and work from anywhere in the world and do this. So I'm really excited about being a recruiter, because I am passionate about it. I love what I do. I mean, I have a true passion for just helping people. I've been through my history, without getting into the dirt, is I've been in situations where I've been held back in my career, or felt like I was held back in my career. And now I get to help other people if they feel like they're in that place. I help them with finding the next best opportunity for them. So
that's awesome, man. That's inspiring. Freedom, flexibility, wealth. I think those are some things that other people are after too.
Pretty much anybody is striving for that, right?
I think most people are.
I would say too, definitely a perk, because I married up. That was another bonus to everything.
Yeah, you definitely outkicked your coverage, that's for sure.
Yep, so. That's right.
Well, right on, man. Thank you for coming on here and sharing your story and being
always
vulnerable and sharing, our work together. It's awesome, man. Looking forward to our next personal barbecue. where can the people that are listening, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
I would definitely say I live on LinkedIn. Outside of my house, LinkedIn is probably only the other place that I am all day, every day. So that's connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easily. Just Brandon McGill. I think it's even LinkedIn/Brandon McGill, if I remember correctly. I don't look at it that often, but that's the best place to connect with me. Reach out to me. Feel free to message me. I usually try to be very responsive in there. And off we go. And heck yeah, Steve's a ginger too. Look at that. Represent.
Yep, I love it. I love it. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for joining us, man. And yeah, if we can get one ginger results, we can get the other two. So. The giant ginger. I love it. I love it. All right, guys. Well, thank you. One last thing here, Brandon. Be the expert. What's one of the advice you'd give the listeners here today?
I kind of going back to what we talked about earlier is just being genuine when talking to people and keeping your foot on the gas. I think as a recruiter, that's probably the two most basic critical things that I would accredit my success or even sometimes occasional lack thereof. But at 100%, like that's what I feel like has accredited to my success, is just being genuine with people, even when it sucks, to tell them like, hey, it's not the right fit or whatever. You know, everybody would rather have honesty than BS and put into a situation that they don't need to be in. So keep your foot on the gas, be genuine, and put in the work.
Love it. Foot on the gas, be genuine. We'll wrap it up with that, folks. This is Donnie Gupton. Brandon, thank you for joining us.
Always.
Relevant Recruiter Show. If you guys are interested in learning more about getting results like Brandon, feel free to reach out to me here on LinkedIn. Send me a direct message. If you're on YouTube watching this after the fact, then go ahead and click the links below to schedule the time to speak with me. Thank you guys for joining us. If you did like it, make sure you tap those little buttons there. And we really appreciate the support as we're going here. We'll see you all next week for another live episode.